I'm Greg Hunter. Welcome to USAWatchdog.com. With us, the top trends researcher in the world, basically. His name is Gerald Celente. Gerald Celente, thank you so much for joining us again on USAWatchdog.com.
It's always great being on with you, Greg.
Of course, you are the publisher of the Trends Journal, and early in December, I know in the pre-interview I said, well, you need to take a bow and a victory lap. You went, no, I don't want to do that. Well, I'm going to do it for you. You said that in 2016, it'll start unwinding, that things were going to start crashing, things were going to start, I don't know exactly your exact words, but things were going to start turning down, and you're predicting an economic calamity in 2016. And what do we get to begin the 2016 year? I don't know, 8, 9, 10% decline in the stock market and people freaking out at Davos, Switzerland, and all of that. I want you to kind of take that theme and run on. Do you see that abating? Is the Fed going to come in and play rescue and prop it all up for another, 5 years or whatever? What's your view?
Well, you mentioned Davos, and that's very significant because as the markets were crashing, the folks at Davos, and remember, the new number just came out, 62 people have more money than half the world's population combined. So a lot of those cats are over there. So what happens? The markets are going down, and you hear from people like Dalio or Bridgewater Associates saying that the Federal Reserve needs to consider quantitative easing again and more stimulus. And all of a sudden the markets go up because what happens? Mario Draghi, former head of the Goldman Sachs gang over there in Europe, and that's the cat, by the way, that put together the deal to bring Greece into the Euro group with the currency when they weren't qualified. Now, of course, the head of the European Central Bank. Davos, Draghi, Dalio, 3Ds, man. Woof. They gave these money junkies over there some monetary meth. And all of a sudden, Draghi comes out and promises more stimulus on the horizon, folks. So to answer your questions, whether it's the Fed, the ECB, China, Bank of Japan's talking about it again, more stimulus. So all they're doing is they're keeping this money junkie, this Ponzi, that's addicted to cheap money alive. And at some point, as we saw, it's crashing. And they keep coming up and trying to give it more life.
I went out to a lunch with a very smart friend of mine. He says, I don't know why they couldn't just keep doing this forever. He says, I'm with you. I think it's going to crash. But he says, I wonder if they can keep doing this forever. And I said, I think they can do it until the dollar, then nobody takes the dollar. What say you?
Well, again, that's why the dollar is staying strong, because all these other currencies are so weak. And again, let's tie it all back into one of the reasons why we said the panic of 2016. And you're looking at currencies crashing around the world. You just saw today, the World Bank came out, and they said 80% of the commodities they're downgrading to lower prices. On average now, the Bloomberg Commodity Index is hitting 1991 levels. So these countries that are resource rich owe a lot of dough, these emerging markets that they borrowed when the quantitative easing began. Now they have to pay it back. They have to pay it back in dollars. The dollar, to answer your question about the dollar is going up because all these other currencies are going down. You look what happened last week. The ruble hit an all-time low. The South African rand, the Mexican peso, the Colombian peso. Hey, those people down in Argentina, they really got a nice one with their new president. Devalued their currency by 30%. Look at the controls going on from Azerbaijan to Nigeria to Angola, one country after another, putting on restrictions of what money the people could take out of the countries. So the dollar is only staying strong because these other currencies are collapsing. Look, you don't have to go too far from here. How about up in Canada? What is the loonie down to now? It's around 70 cents to $1. And again, one country after another. So as these commodity prices continue to go down, the currencies go down with them. And here's the rub. I forgot Venezuela. How could I forget Venezuela? And then there's Brazil. Again, one currency after another going down, but look at their inflation rates. You're looking at a 14% inflation rate in Brazil. You're looking at over 200% inflation rate in Venezuela. So the dollar's going to maintain itself, not because of the strength of the economy, not because of the enormous debt that we have. It's because everybody else is in worse shape.
Is this why some people like Martin Armstrong, I don't know if you know this or not, but he actually came out with a piece last week and said people should start opening up U.S. bank accounts. And then we hear news of possible bail-ins, and Italian banks are in big trouble. And, they were in big trouble a few weeks ago. I think four banks went under, four smaller banks went under. They bailed people in. Somebody hung themselves or killed themselves over in Italy. And I know this is near and dear to your heart, because you are Celente. And so, is Italian banks, could they start off a daisy chain of bail-ins and things like that? And what do you make of Martin Armstrong telling people in Europe to start opening U.S. bank accounts?
Is it daisy chain or, circle jerk? Because it's more than just the Italian banks. And, of course, my blood's Italian, but my heart's American. And when you look at what's going on in the banks, let's go back to oil. Let's go back to oil and look at some 20% of the junk bonds in the United States that are tied to energy and mining. And these junk bonds now, particularly in the energy sector, you're paying 56 cents on the dollar. This is back to 2008 levels. You're looking at banks are in bear territory now, whether it's Deutsche Bank, one bank after another, Standard Chartered, one after another, Barclays showing lousy returns. In the United States, the banks are doing not that great, man. They're laying off tens of thousands of people. And they're tied in very, very heavy in not only the energy sector, but then go to the states that are resource rich from the shale boom and look at the banks that borrowed money there and look at their stocks. Would I put money in the banks in the United States? The only money I put in the bank is money to run our business. Because here's the deal, man. If there is a, quote, terrorist strike, false flag or real, bank holiday, the bail-ins that you're talking about, the global banking system is in a bear market. And by the way, so is China, what did China do last night? The market was only down 6.4%. Japan, bear markets. France, UK, bear markets. Everything's going to be all right. I wouldn't put my money in the banks, and I'll tell you why quickly. Go back to, and I mentioned terror strike, go back to 2011. I had money in CDs. You know, Greg, once upon a time, before zero interest rate policy, before they were shoving it to us with quantitative easing, you could put money in CDs and actually make money on it above the rate of inflation. I called up after 9/11. I'm a New Yorker. I don't know if they're going to whack Indian Point power plant 45 miles north of Ground Zero. They say planes are shooting down the Hudson. I know exactly where Indian Point is. If that thing goes, man, it's a scene like nobody's ever going to see. I call up Fleet Bank. They're no longer there. They were bought out by one of the big guys. But anyway, the guy said to me, I said, I want my money wire transferred to the Rhinebeck Bank. I start giving him, he cuts me off. He said, certificates of deposit are financial instruments, and they're traded on Wall Street. Wall Street is closed. So in other words, screw you, Jack. We got your money. We'll give it to you if and when we want to give it back. Look what happened in Greece. Look what happened in Cyprus. Look what's going on as the emerging market currencies are collapsing. Look at commodity prices collapsing. Put your money in the bank. Knock yourself out, man. You know the motto of the Trends Journal. Think for yourself. Speaking for myself, why should I put it in the bank? They give me nothing back, and now they're even talking negative interest rates. Yeah, I like you, Greg. You're a nice guy. Put your money in my bank, and I'll charge you to keep it there.
I have a friend of mine, and he says, you know what I started doing? I said, what's that? I don't want to give his name, Bob. And he said, I just started depositing a couple $1,000s with a power company. I mean, your bill is your bill. You're not going to go back on it. So I just started using them as a little safety deposit box. I'm like, oh, very interesting. Do you think bail-ins are coming to America? Do you think it's going to be a day when they say, yep, you can have $200 this week out of your ATM? Do you think that's coming?
Yes. Yes. The entire look at the freak show that they call the presidential race, or as we called it, the presidential reality show before Donald Trump got into it. One thing I agree with Trump, and I would vote for this guy if it put a bullet in my head or to my head. If they're going to put a bullet in my head, I'd vote for him. But I wouldn't vote for any of the cats out there. My campaign slogan for 2016 is Trump or Clinton, Hitler or Hitlery. Having said that, Trump says you got a bunch of incompetent, stupid people running the government. I agree with him 100%. Look at the Fed, that private organization that people think is tied to the government. You look at their minutes that come out 5 years after, because in this land of freedom and democracy, we're not allowed to see what the money changers are thinking and doing until 5 years after they do it. Having said that, everything they predicted in the countdown to 2008 with the panic, they missed. They missed everything. And they're missing it now. They have no more cards to play. What are they going to do? Zero interest rate policy? They're trying it in Europe. It's not working. More quantitative easing. Yes, it'll boost the equity markets again. Guaranteed. More merger and acquisition activity. You know, it was at an all-time high in 2015. So that's what it will do as everything else goes down. Real wages are down. Median household income adjusted for inflation is at 1999 levels.
And you're thinking that along with the quantitative easing that you think's coming, because what Ray Dalio of Bridgewater was, well, we ought to, who he can call on the phone and who I can call on the phone are a totally different group of people. But you think that not only will they do QE, but they're going to do bail-ins, and they're going to seize your money and say, sorry, it's ours.
They'll do it under a guise of something else. Those terrorists, them ISISes. Because of them ISISes, we got to freeze your account. And we'll call a bank holiday. Yeah, remember they did that one before 1933, the Emergency Federal Banking Act? Yeah, and they took your gold from you, and yet gold was trading what? In those days it was pegged to the dollar at what, $20.62 or something like that. And then after they stole the people's gold, they jacked up the price to $35 an ounce because the dollar was pegged to gold, which means that you lost 70% of your purchasing power. They'll do anything they want. They take you to wars based on lies. They steal our money in the name of too big to fail. Come on. Of course they'll do anything they want. It's the merger of state and corporate powers. Mussolini called it fascism. In America, they call it too big to fail.
These conservatives, I don't know if you heard about this, all these conservatives came out and they trashed Trump. And I'm not stumping for Trump. I'm not Republican or Democrat, and I don't know who I'm going to vote for, but I just thought it was unfair. These conservatives came out and talked about Trump. And, if I was Trump, I'd say, yeah, I had 4 bankruptcies. I ate it. I took it right in the chops. I didn't go to my buddies and get bailed out. I had to take losses. The other thing I would say about these conservatives, and I want your take on this, is that not a word about Goldman Sachs just paying another $5 billion, a couple of weeks ago, for mishandling mortgage fraud, and not a word about that, and that's the one thing Bernie Sanders, and I think the rest of the stuff he does is crazy, but the one thing he says about the banks, what they paid $210 billion in fines and restitutions and things like that, nobody's gone to jail, and none of these conservatives have brought up the fact that these bankers are ripping us off by the tune of tens of trillions of dollars. What say you about the conservatives against Trump?
Well, it's the whole thing. Conservatives aren't conservatives anymore, and liberals aren't liberals. And then you look at me like Trump pointed out that Ted Cruz, they borrowed a couple of $1 million from the Goldman Sachs gang, and his wife was vice president with them. And look at the people that are funding them. So again, when you made a great point too, about when I say about the liberals, what a bunch of phonies they are. You remember Obama comes in, he's going to prosecute those people that made you lose your house and have and robbed your money. The bank's doing it. What was the word that you used? Goldman Sachs miss what?
Oh, they mishandled. That's why they reported.
Mishandled, yeah. Mishandled, misstepped, misspoke. It's like she's a hooker out there. Miss this, miss that. How about high crimes and misdemeanors? How about, Greg, 6 banks were convicted of felonies for rigging the LIBOR rate, the interest rates, and rigging the Forex markets, the currency markets, at a tune, by the way, which are played at $5.3 trillion a day. Not one head rolled. I went back into saying what fascism is, the merger of state and corporate powers. Don't go over that yellow line. You're going 5 miles over the limit. Where'd you come from? Do you have anything to drink? Get out of the car. Put your hands on the roof. Let me see your license and registration. Stand on one foot and say the alphabet backwards. This is what you call a neo-colonial, neo-feudal society where we have feudal laws. The rich get a slap on the wrist and we get a whack on the head for committing the most minor crime because we have to obey the law. And then remember who did this. That guy Holder. Yeah. Who went back to work with the white shoe boy firms over there in Wall Street. Eric Holder. Hold this. What a disgusting human being. They're too big to jail. Look at the dirty deals that clown of a man pulled when he was fronting for Clinton. People forget that when Slick Willie was going out of office, man, they were going to hit him hard. Oh, and this is what else people forget. Remember when that vote count was in question over there in Florida? You know where Clinton went? Adios, out of the country, not a word. What I'm saying is Holder is a traitor to America, as well as this woman in there that's taken his place, Lynch. Yeah. No heads roll. Convicted of felonies. Misspoke, misstepped, misled. It's one joke. Nobody wants to call them high crimes and misdemeanors, but hey, you could start wars based on lies, kill millions of people. Dr. Paul Craig Roberts is on your show, and he's a contributor to the Trends Journal. He just put out a piece a couple of days ago, pointing out the crimes going on and talking about Nixon and Reagan. And when you talk about, overthrowing Allende in Chile, when you think about what happened in Grenada, the Iran-Contra. But nobody's talking about, hey, isn't it a lovely day in Libya, overthrowing a government that did nothing to us and destroying the joint? Assad has to go. That's Hillary. Oh, yeah, Obama. One after another. Gaddafi has to go. Assad has to go. What I'm saying, Greg, is it's high crimes and misdemeanors, whether it's on the murderous end through wars or stealing our money and turning America into now, as you well know, the middle class a minority.
Do you think Hillary will be charged and or indicted? She looks like she's in deep trouble. I've said for a while I think she'll be charged and indicted. And I've said for a longer while I don't think she'll be president. I don't think she can win. But do you think she'll be charged and or indicted?
I don't know, but if she does, you see the base that votes for these people, they will vote for her no matter what. And she's playing the gender card. My grandmother was a grandmother, and my mother was a mother, and I'm a mother, and I was a grandmother, and wouldn't it be great to have a woman in the White House? And I'm tired of hearing this, by the way. It's not about race. Certainly not. Look at Obama. not about creed, and not about color. Psychopaths and sociopaths come in all races, creeds, colors, and genders. But she's playing that card. And when you look at the data, it supports her that she may win. Because you go back to the elections, it's like 70 million to 60 million, about 10 million more women vote than men. And then when you look at the data of the last two elections, Obama got between 10 and 12% more women votes. So that's what this is going to come down to. The people that care about Benghazi are the people that don't like her already. But what they're missing is the biggest story about how they've been paid off, the Clintons, for deregulating the Glass-Steagall Act, the Federal Communications Act, allowing them to promote drugs on TV. You weren't allowed to do that. One after another. Why do you think Slick Willie Clinton and Hillary, or Hitlery more appropriately, get $300,000 to talk to one of the groups like Goldman Sachs for 1 hour? You think it's because of their intelligence and they're saying something? You can listen to BS all day for free. How about calling it a bribe and a payoff? How about looking at the Clinton Foundation and all that foreign money that poured into it? That's the biggest story. The biggest story is how Hillary Clinton and her husband have sold this country out and have started wars and murdered people around the world. Go to that video of Hillary on YouTube at CBS when they asked her, how do you feel that when you found out, what did you feel when you found out that Colonel Gaddafi was killed? And she goes, we came, we saw, he died. They should have taken her out in a straitjacket. Instead, she may be our next president of the United States.
People say, it's very well documented in the book Blood Feud, that Obama hates her. And some people say that he's going to just take her out. I'm one of them. I think he's not going to let her be president after dropping these bombs with Benghazi and her server and the Clinton Foundation and all this other stuff. He dropped these bombs on her head through Valerie Jarrett, and I think he's not going to allow her to be president.
You may be right. You may be right. I don't know. I don't know. But as we see it now, we see it Trump and Clinton at this point. And Trump, he is not going to get the woman vote. And you're going to start seeing a lot of stuff coming out against him.
You think that she can beat Trump?
I do. At this point. Again, let me just read you something here. This is from our Trends Journal, the spring of 2015. And you see the cover. It's Liars, Cowards, Freaks, and Fools. Welcome to the presidential reality show. And this is before a real reality show champion got into the race. And here's what we said. If the election were held today and Hillary Clinton survives, remember, this is last April, the cash for influence scandal, we forecast Clinton as the winner on issues of gay rights, women's rights, abortion. Cruz, Paul, Rubio, Carson, Fiorina, and Huckabee will find weak support among a sizable portion of the women voters. With all the candidates, including Clinton, on the same war page and none presenting strong and unique economic policies to truly create jobs and increase wages, what separates Clinton from the guys is the girls. And we go on to say in the 2008 presidential election, 70.4 million women cast ballots versus 60.7 million men, and going on to what I said before.
So if she makes it, if she survives, she might knock off Trump. But if not, who knows?
I have to say, I began my career, by the way, at a graduate school. I used to run political campaigns in Westchester County in New York, the richest county in America. They sent me up to Albany. I was the assistant to the Secretary of the New York State Senate. I also designed and instructed American politics and campaign technology at St. John's University. I know a little thing or two about running campaigns. The election has just begun. You go back to the old days, the campaign didn't begin until after Labor Day, in reality. Well, I'm saying this, Greg, because there is still an opportunity for a third party to emerge. And when you look what happened in Spain, we see what's going on in Italy and in other countries, they pop up like that, whether it's Podemos, Five-Star Movement, whatever one it might be. Syriza came out of nowhere. Like the people, hate the people, not the issue. Right now is a time for a third party.
How about Bloomberg?
Nah, he won't go anywhere fast.
Yeah, that's what I think. Nobody likes him. Anyway, hey, listen. You are the publisher of the Trends Journal. What a great interview. We went all kinds of crazy places we haven't gone before. Thank you so much. And your forecast for 2016, you think will it crash the economy? Will it spiral into a deeper abyss before the election or after the election of 2016?
It'll go into it's a global recession. It's already on. What they could do to prop up the stock markets, I don't know, but our forecast is they won't be able to. Very important to also understand that people will not blame Obama for the declining economy. They're not tuned in enough, and they've been pushed down to the I don't care, and I don't believe in hope and change anymore. It'll be neutral as to the party preference.
Okay. Gerald Celente, thank you very much for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com and giving us your opinion and your future casting from the Trends Journal. You are the publisher of the Trends Journal. Thank you so much for joining us today on USAWatchdog.com.
Greg, thanks for having me on. It's always great being on with you, and thank you for all that you're doing.